Colin Mercer wiped sweat from his brow as he inspected the foundation of his latest construction project. At 42, his weathered hands bore the calluses of a man who had built everything he owned from the ground up. The afternoon sun beat down on the Denver construction site as his phone buzzed in his pocket. "Mercer Construction," he answered, his voice carrying the natural authority that had earned him respect throughout Colorado's building industry. "Colin, we need to finalize the anniversary plans." Natalie's voice came through, a hint of impatience coloring her tone. 15 years deserves something special. Colin sighed, looking across the skyline at the buildings he'd helped create. "I thought we settled this. Your family's cabin, just us and the kids. I was thinking maybe we could drop the kids at my sister's. Make it romantic." There was something in her voice that made Colin pause. After 15 years of marriage, he'd developed a sixth sense about Natalie. Something wasn't right. "The kids are coming," he said firmly. "Sophie's been looking forward to this for weeks. And Alex needs time away from those video games." A beat of silence. "Fine. I'll pack for 4. After hanging up, Colin couldn't shake the feeling of unease. Natalie had changed over the past year. Subtle shifts in behavior that individually meant nothing, but together formed a pattern he couldn't ignore. New clothes, late book club, meetings, unexplained absences, and a growing emotional distance. That evening, Colin arrived home to their upscale Cherry Creek neighborhood house, a home he'd partially built himself. Through the window, he saw Natalie on the phone in the kitchen, her back turned. She was laughing, a genuine laugh he rarely heard anymore. When she spotted his truck in the driveway, she quickly ended the call. "Who was that?" he asked casually, setting his keys on the counter. "Vanessa. Going over some details for when we get back from the cabin," Natalie replied, tucking a strand of auburn hair behind her ear. At 39, she still turned heads with her fitness model physique and calculated style. Colin nodded, not pushing despite the lie. Vanessa was in Breckenridge this week. He knew because he'd spoken to her husband Brett about a potential renovation job just hours earlier. He found Sophie in her room, meticulously organizing her small backpack for the trip. His daughter glanced up with serious brown eyes, so like his own. Sometimes Colin felt she saw everything. "Daddy, can we go fishing at the cabin like last time?" she asked. "Absolutely, princess. Just you and me at dawn, like always." He ruffled her hair, noticing a drawing on her desk. It showed 4 stick figures standing together, but with a 5th figure drawn faintly in the background. When he asked about it, Sophie shrugged and quickly put it away. Alex's door was closed, the telltale sounds of his gaming headset filtering through. At 14, his son had begun pulling away, spending more time with Natalie, adopting her materialistic values. Colin knocked, but received only a grunt in response. That night, Colin lay awake beside Natalie, watching as she scrolled through her phone with a small smile playing on her lips. When she noticed his gaze, she quickly set the phone face down. "What?" she asked defensively. "Nothing," Colin replied. "Just thinking about the cabin. Been a while since we were all there together." She murmured noncommittally, turning away from him. The next morning, while loading the SUV for their 3-hour drive to the remote cabin near Grand Lake, Colin noticed Natalie making a brief call from the garage, her voice hushed. When she returned, she seemed distracted, checking her phone repeatedly. Sophie watched everything with quiet intensity, sticking close to her father. During a moment alone while Natalie was doing a final house check, she whispered, "Dad, I don't think Mom wants to go to the cabin." "Why's that, Soph?" She told someone on the phone it was a complication. Sophie's eyes, too perceptive for her age, held a question Colin wasn't ready to answer. The drive into the mountains was tense. Alex remained plugged into his devices in the back seat, while Natalie kept checking her phone despite the spotty service. Colin drove silently, his knuckles white on the steering wheel, cataloging every detail, every suspicious glance at the passing mile markers. What bothered Colin most wasn't just the possibility of betrayal. It was the realization that his carefully constructed life might be built on a foundation as unstable as wet sand. Chapter 2. The Note. The winding mountain roads grew narrower as Colin's SUV climbed toward Grand Lake. Natalie had grown increasingly agitated as cell service became intermittent, checking her phone compulsively at every curve. "Maybe we should have gone to Cancun instead," she said, breaking an hour-long silence. "This place is so isolated." Colin's eyes flickered to the rearview mirror. That's the point of a getaway, isn't it? To disconnect. In the back seat, Sophie met her father's gaze in the mirror, a silent communication passing between them. She had been unusually quiet, her small notebook in her lap, where she'd been scribbling instead of playing her usual card games. Alex removed one earbud. How much longer? I'm starving. About 40 minutes, Colin replied. We'll stop at the general store first. Stock up before heading to the cabin. Natalie's phone chimed with a text, a brief moment of service. Her reaction was subtle but unmistakable. A quick intake of breath, a flush creeping up her neck, fingers moving rapidly to reply before the signal disappeared again. Work? Colin asked casually. Vanessa, Natalie lied smoothly, making sure we arrived safely. The family stopped at Willow Creek General Store, the last outpost before the remote cabin. While Natalie shopped for groceries with Alex, Colin checked their fishing gear outside the store. Sophie approached, glancing around to ensure they were alone. Dad? She whispered. I need to tell you something. Colin crouched to her level. What is it, princess? Sophie's eyes darted toward the store. Mom has another phone. I saw her hiding it in her toiletry bag. A cold weight settled in Colin's stomach. You sure about that? Sophie nodded solemnly. She doesn't know I saw. She uses it when she thinks no one's watching. Before Colin could probe further, Natalie and Alex emerged from the store with grocery bags. The conversation halted, but the seed had been planted. As they continued toward the cabin, Colin's mind raced with possibilities, none of them innocent. The Patterson family cabin sat nestled among tall pines, overlooking a serene lake. Originally a modest structure built by Natalie's grandfather, Colin had spent 2 summers renovating it into a comfortable retreat with modern amenities while preserving its rustic charm. It represented countless hours of his labor, a gift of love to a family he now suspected was fracturing. After unloading the SUV, Colin announced, Alex, help me check the generator and water pump. Sophie, you and Mom can get the beds made. Natalie frowned. Actually, I should start dinner. Sophie can handle the beds. In the utility shed, Colin tried engaging with his son. How's school going? Still having trouble with algebra? Alex shrugged, barely looking up from his phone despite the lack of service. It's fine. You know, there's more to life than that screen, Colin said, checking the generator oil. When I was your age. Yeah, I know, Alex interrupted. You were building houses and working 2 jobs. We've heard it. The disrespect stung, but Colin recognized a deeper issue. Everything okay between you and your mom lately? Alex stiffened. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. Just asking. Mom's cool. She gets me, Alex muttered. Unlike some people. Colin let the comment slide, focusing instead on the task at hand while processing what this might mean. Had Natalie been turning their son against him? What else didn't he know? Dinner was a strained affair. Natalie seemed preoccupied, her attention divided between picking at her food and glancing out the window toward the lake. Colin noticed her check her watch several times. Early appointment tomorrow? He asked pointedly. What? No, Natalie replied too quickly. Just thinking we should watch the sunset by the lake after dinner. Great idea. Colin agreed, watching her face fall slightly. Family tradition, right kids? Alex groaned, but Sophie's eyes lit up. Can we make s'mores too? As they cleared the table, Sophie maneuvered close to her father, slipping a folded piece of paper into his hand. Their eyes met briefly before she turned to help Natalie with the dishes. Colin waited until he stepped outside onto the porch to unfold the note. In Sophie's careful handwriting were 6 words that confirmed his worst fears. Dad, turn around now. Mom's lying. Colin's military training kicked in. Assess, plan, execute. He needed evidence before confrontation. He folded the note carefully into his pocket and rejoined his family, a calm mask concealing the storm within. Think I left the fishing gear in the car, he announced. Going to grab it before dark. Outside, Colin circled back to peer through the cabin window. Natalie was checking her watch again, her expression anxious. He watched as she told Sophie and Alex she needed to use the bathroom, then slipped upstairs with her toiletry bag. Colin made his decision. Sophie, he called through the screen door. Want to help me find the tackle box? His daughter was at his side in seconds. Once they were alone by the SUV, Colin knelt down. I need you to be honest with me. What else do you know? Sophie's eyes welled with tears. Mom's planning something bad. I heard her talking to someone about meeting at the cabin. She didn't know I was listening. When was this? Yesterday. She said the cabin was perfect because you'd never suspect. Sophie hesitated. Dad, there's more. I found text messages on her secret phone. She accidentally left it in the bathroom. It said they were going to tell you this weekend. Colin's heart hammered in his chest. Tell me what? That she's leaving. With him. The betrayal cut deep, but Colin maintained his composure for his daughter's sake. Sophie, I need a favor. A big one. Can you help me? She nodded without hesitation. I'm going to say we need to drive back to town for something I forgot. I need you to find that phone and bring it to me. Can you do that? It's in her blue toiletry bag, the small zipper pocket, Sophie whispered. I already checked. Colin stared at his daughter, impressed by her resourcefulness and saddened that she'd been burdened with this knowledge. How long have you known? 3 months, Sophie admitted. I tried to tell you, but you always said Mom was just busy with her new job. The realization that his 9-year-old had been carrying this secret alone filled Colin with both guilt and resolve. I'm sorry, Princess, but that ends today. Back inside the cabin, Colin announced they needed to make a run to the general store for propane. The tank's almost empty. Won't last the weekend. Can it wait until morning? Natalie asked, clearly annoyed. Better safe than sorry with the night temperatures dropping, Colin insisted. Sophie, want to come along for the ride? As they prepared to leave, Sophie disappeared upstairs to use the bathroom. Minutes later, she emerged, giving her father an almost imperceptible nod. The drive back down the mountain was silent until they were well away from the cabin. Colin pulled into the empty parking lot of a scenic overlook. Let me see it, he said quietly. Sophie reached into her pocket and withdrew a small burner phone. I'm sorry, Dad. You have nothing to be sorry for, Colin assured her, taking the phone. You did exactly right. My wife wanted to celebrate our anniversary at her family's remote cabin. On the drive there, my 9-year-old daughter passed me a note. It said, Dad, turn around now. I made an excuse to stop. In the gas station bathroom, she showed me Mom's other phone, and what I saw made me sick. Chapter 3, Revelations. The bathroom of the Willow Creek gas station smelled of pine cleaner and neglect. Colin locked the door behind them, his hands steady despite the earthquake happening inside him. Sophie stood watch by the sink as he turned on the burner phone. No password. Natalie hadn't expected anyone to find it. The text messages loaded, revealing months of conversation between Natalie and someone saved simply as R. Colin scrolled through rapidly, each message a knife twist. Miss you already. 3 more days until freedom. Are you sure he doesn't suspect? Colin's clueless. Too busy with his precious business to notice anything. What about the kids? Alex will adjust. Sophie might be a problem. Too attached to her father. The most recent messages outlined their plan. Ryan Patterson, Natalie's brother-in-law and Vanessa's husband, would arrive at the cabin tomorrow night while Colin took the kids fishing. They would confront Colin together, tell him about their 2-year affair, and announce they were leaving together. They'd already secured an apartment in Phoenix. Ryan, his wife's sister's husband, a man who had sat at their dinner table, played with their children, accepted Colin's help with renovating his own home. The betrayal was exponential. Dad, Sophie's small voice broke through his shock. Are you okay? Colin composed himself, shielding his daughter from the depths of his rage. I'm fine, Princess. You did good. What are we going to do? Colin considered their options. The tactical part of his brain, honed during his years as a Marine before building his construction empire, was already formulating a response. But first, he needed more information. We're going to get some ice cream, he said calmly, pocketing the phone. And make a plan. At the small diner adjacent to the gas station, Colin bought Sophie a sundae while he made 2 calls from his own phone, stepping outside briefly. When he returned, his expression was controlled, revealing nothing of the storm within. Sophie, I need you to be brave a little longer, he said, sliding into the booth. We're going back to the cabin, and we're going to act like nothing's wrong. But Mom and Uncle Ryan. I know, but sometimes in life, you need to gather all the facts before you act. Colin leaned forward. This is important. Can you trust me? Sophie nodded, her spoon pausing midway to her mouth. Are you and Mom getting divorced? The question hit him like a physical blow. I don't know yet. But no matter what, you and Alex will always be my priority. Understand. Back at the cabin, Natalie was pacing the living room. What took so long? I was about to call. She stopped, realizing the absurdity of the statement with no cell service. Line at the store. Colin lied smoothly. Had to wait for them to bring more propane from the back. That night, Colin lay awake beside his wife, listening to her breathing, wondering how many nights she'd lain beside him thinking of another man. The woman he'd built his life around, the mother of his children, was a stranger. The burner phone, now hidden in his fishing tackle box, contained not just texts but photos. Intimate photos. Evidence of rendezvous in hotels while Colin thought Natalie was at client meetings for her boutique marketing job. Plans for their new life using money from their joint accounts. Morning brought forced normalcy. Colin suggested taking the kids fishing at dawn as planned, but Natalie suddenly insisted on joining them, something she'd never done before. Since when do you fish? Colin asked, raising an eyebrow as he prepared the gear. It's our anniversary weekend. I want to try new things, she replied with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Colin recognized the tactic. She was buying time, preventing him from being alone with the kids. As they walked to the lake, Sophie stayed close to her father. Alex trudged ahead, still sullen but at least away from his devices. Colin noted Natalie checking her watch again. Expecting someone? He asked casually. Her head snapped up. What? No, just checking how much daylight we have. The fishing expedition was cut short when Natalie claimed a headache. Back at the cabin, Colin watched as she took 2 aspirin, then retreated upstairs to rest, but not before checking her hidden pocket where the burner phone should have been. Her momentary panic was visible only to Colin, who was watching for it. Kids, why don't you explore the trails a bit? Stay within shouting distance, Colin suggested once Natalie was upstairs. When they were gone, he made another call, keeping his voice low. Diana? It's Colin Mercer. I need that information now. Yes, all of it. Diana Frost, a private investigator Colin had hired after Sophie's revelation at the gas station, confirmed what the phone had suggested. The affair had been ongoing for 2 years. Ryan had been embezzling from his financial consulting firm to fund their planned escape. Most devastating was the discovery that Alex knew. Not everything, but enough. Natalie had been priming him, telling him that Colin was controlling, that they deserved better. When the kids returned from their hike, Colin pulled Alex aside. Son, we need to talk. Alex's defiance was immediate. About what? About why you've been so angry with me. About what Mom has told you. The boy's face paled. She didn't tell me anything. Alex, Colin said firmly, I know about Ryan. I know Mom's been talking to you about leaving. Tears filled the boy's eyes. She said you'd try to keep us. That you'd take everything from her. Colin controlled his anger. Has your mother ever known me to be unfair? To be cruel? Alex looked away. No. I built this family with everything I have. I would never abandon you or your sister. Colin placed his hands on his son's shoulders. But I need the truth. All of it. Slowly, Alex revealed what he knew. Natalie had told him they would be starting fresh with Ryan, who would be a better match for their family. She'd promised Alex a new school where he could reinvent himself, free from his reputation as the contractor's son. Did she say when this was happening? Colin asked. After this trip, Alex admitted. She said we should enjoy one last weekend as a family. For memories. The sheer calculation of it all hardened Colin's resolve. His wife and her lover had plotted not just to destroy his marriage, but to steal his children and bankrupt him in the process. As evening approached, Colin noticed Natalie growing increasingly anxious, checking out the window toward the long driveway. She'd changed into a new outfit, applied makeup, and opened wine, setting the stage. Kids, time for a movie in the loft, Colin announced, giving them a significant look. Big screen, popcorn, the works. Once they were upstairs, Colin poured himself a glass of whiskey and sat opposite his wife at the kitchen table. 15 years, he said quietly. 15 years, Natalie. She set down her wine glass. What's that supposed to mean? It means I know. Colin's voice was controlled, dangerous in its restraint. I know about Ryan. I know about Phoenix. I know about the money you've been moving from our accounts. Natalie's face cycled through shock, denial, and finally cold calculation. How long have you known? Long enough. The sound of tires on gravel interrupted them. Headlights swept across the cabin windows as a vehicle approached. Perfect timing, Colin said, taking another sip of whiskey. Right on schedule. Natalie stood abruptly. Colin, let me explain. Save it for the attorneys, he cut her off. But first, let's welcome our guest, shall we? Chapter 4, Calculated Moves. The headlights illuminated the cabin windows as Ryan's Range Rover pulled up outside. Natalie's eyes darted between Colin and the door, panic rising in her expression. "Colin, please," she started. "Please what?" His voice remained unnervingly calm. "Please don't make a scene. Please let you destroy our family quietly." A knock at the door. 3 confident raps. Colin stood, straightening his shoulders. "Should I get that, or would you prefer to welcome your lover yourself?" The color drained from Natalie's face. "The kids are upstairs, watching a movie with headphones on. All part of the plan, right?" Colin moved toward the door. "Your plan was to have this conversation with me. Well, now we'll have it." He opened the door to reveal Ryan Patterson, tall, tanned, dressed in expensive casual wear that screamed aspiring wealth more than actual success. For a moment, Ryan's practiced smile faltered as he registered Colin's presence instead of Natalie's. "Colin," he recovered quickly. "I thought you'd be out with the kids." Change of plans. Colin stepped aside. "Come in. We were just talking about you." Ryan entered with the confidence of a man who believed he held all the cards. The same confidence Colin had seen in opponents who didn't realize they'd already lost. "Natalie," Ryan acknowledged with a nod, maintaining a facade of casualness. "Thought we agreed on timing." "She didn't have much choice," Colin interrupted. "Hard to coordinate when your burner phone goes missing." Ryan's eyes widened fractionally before his expression smoothed over. "I don't know what you're talking about." Colin pulled the phone from his pocket, tossing it onto the coffee table. 2 years of messages say otherwise. Rather explicit ones, at that. The 3 adults stood in a triangle of tension, the comfortable cabin suddenly feeling like a cage. "Colin," Natalie found her voice, switching tactics from denial to reasonableness. "We didn't want it to happen this way. We were going to tell you tomorrow, properly. With dignity." "Dignity." Colin laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "Is that what you call planning to take my children across state lines? Draining our accounts? Turning my son against me?" Ryan took a step forward, hands raised placatingly. "Look, we should all calm down. We're adults here. These things happen. These things." Colin's voice dropped dangerously. "You mean screwing your wife's sister? Betraying your brother-in-law? Those things?" Ryan's jaw tightened. "Natalie and I didn't choose this. It just happened. For 2 years? With hotel receipts, secret phones, and an apartment lease in Phoenix?" Colin shook his head. "That's not just happening. That's calculated betrayal." A creak on the stairs interrupted them. Sophie stood halfway down, her small face solemn. "Dad, is everything okay?" "Everything's fine, Princess," Colin assured her. "Uncle Ryan just stopped by to talk about grown-up things. Head back upstairs, okay?" Sophie's eyes moved from her father to her mother to Ryan, understanding more than a child her age should. "I told Dad about the phone," she said to Natalie. "I'm not sorry." Natalie blanched. "Sophie, upstairs, soft," Colin interjected gently. "I've got this." After Sophie reluctantly retreated, Colin turned back to the adulterers. "Here's what's going to happen. Ryan, you're going to leave. Now, Natalie, you can go with him if you want, but the kids stay with me tonight." "You can't decide that," Natalie protested. "They're my children too. Should have thought about that before planning to kidnap them to Arizona," Colin replied evenly. "Don't worry, we'll sort out custody arrangements through proper channels. Unless you'd prefer I call the police about the financial improprieties I've discovered." Ryan tensed. "What financial improprieties?" "The ones Diana Frost documented," Colin said, referring to the private investigator. "Transfers from Brookfield Investments client accounts to your personal offshore account. Did you think I wouldn't check thoroughly once I knew about the affair?" Ryan paled. "You're bluffing." Colin pulled out his phone, displaying a series of transaction records. $300,000 over 18 months. Creative accounting, but not creative enough. The revelation left Ryan speechless. Natalie looked between the 2 men, her carefully constructed future crumbling. "You set us up," she accused Colin. "This whole cabin trip was your idea," Colin reminded her. "I just played along once Sophie showed me what was really happening." Ryan recovered, anger replacing shock. "You can't prove anything without exposing your own investigation methods. Private investigators accessing financial records? That's not exactly legal either." Colin smiled thinly. "I don't need to prove anything in court. Yet. Right now, I just need you both to understand the situation. You're not holding any cards here. He pulled out another document from his jacket pocket. This is a record of every dollar removed from our joint accounts over the past year. Funds that were contractually designated for our children's education and our business operations. Natalie's breathing quickened. I had every right to steal from your children? Colin finished. A judge might disagree, especially when they see the text discussing how to hide assets during the divorce you were planning. The cabin fell silent except for the distant sound of the movie playing upstairs. Colin let the moment stretch, watching Ryan and Natalie exchange panicked glances. What do you want? Ryan finally asked, his voice tight. Tonight? I want you gone, Colin stated flatly. Tomorrow, my attorney will contact you both with terms. Terms? Natalie echoed. For how this ends, Colin clarified. Because it is ending, make no mistake. Ryan grabbed his car keys. This is bullshit. Natalie, get your things. We're leaving. The kids, she began. Stay with me, Colin said firmly. Unless you want the authorities questioning why you're fleeing across state lines with minors after withdrawing large sums of money. Ryan headed for the door, his earlier confidence shattered. Natalie now. She hesitated, looking up toward where her children were. For a moment, Colin saw a flicker of maternal concern, quickly overshadowed by self-preservation. I'll call you tomorrow, she told Colin, grabbing her purse. This isn't over. Actually, it is, Colin replied. It ended the moment you involved my children in your betrayal. After they left, the cabin felt eerily quiet. Colin poured another whiskey and called upstairs. Kids, you can come down now. Sophie appeared first, followed by Alex, whose red-rimmed eyes revealed he'd been crying. Where's Mom? Alex asked, his voice small. She left with Uncle Ryan. Colin answered honestly. She needed some time to think. Sophie climbed onto her father's lap, something she hadn't done in years. Are we staying at the cabin? Colin nodded. For tonight. Tomorrow we'll head home and figure things out. Is Mom coming back? Alex pressed, confusion and hurt evident in his expression. Colin looked his son in the eyes. I don't know, buddy. But no matter what happens between me and your mother, nothing changes how much I love you both. That night, with his children finally asleep, Colin sat on the cabin porch staring at the stars. He'd won the first round, but he harbored no illusions about what was coming. Natalie wouldn't surrender without a fight, and Ryan had too much to lose to back down easily. His phone vibrated with a text from Diana Frost. Additional information secured. Moving to phase 2 per your instructions. Colin texted back a single word. Proceed. The real work was just beginning. Chapter 5. The Deeper Betrayal. The drive back to Denver the following day was heavy with unspoken questions. Alex sat silently in the back seat, headphones on but no music playing, a shield against conversation. Sophie alternated between watching the mountains pass and studying her father's profile, gauging his composure. Colin maintained a steady presence for his children, but his mind raced through the intricate plan he'd set in motion. Diana Frost had been thorough, uncovering layers of deception that went beyond the affair. The financial trail she'd followed revealed something far more calculated than a simple infidelity. Back at home, Colin found evidence that Natalie had already removed personal items, clothes, jewelry, mementos. She'd been preparing for this split longer than he'd realized. What surprised him was finding the master bedroom closet still containing the custom suit he'd had made for their anniversary, the one she'd insisted he order. Next to it hung a bag containing the dress she'd asked him to buy her as a gift. Props for a performance that would never happen. Colin called his longtime friend Leo Daniels, arranging for the children to spend the afternoon with Leo's family while he attended to urgent business. Leo, a former Marine who'd served with Colin before they both entered civilian life, understood immediately the gravity of the situation. How bad? Leo asked when he arrived to pick up the kids. Worse than I thought, Colin replied quietly, making sure Alex and Sophie were out of earshot. I need a few hours to set things in motion. Leo clasped his shoulder firmly. Whatever you need. Angela will keep the kids distracted with that new pool. Once alone, Colin contacted his attorney, Benjamin Wells, who arrived within the hour carrying a thick folder of documents. Ben was not just Colin's lawyer but a strategic partner in several business ventures. A man who understood that legal battles were won before they ever reached a courtroom. Diana sent everything over this morning, Ben said, spreading papers across the dining room table. "It's a mess, Colin, but it gives us leverage." The documents revealed that Ryan had been systematically embezzling from his investment clients for nearly 3 years, longer than the affair had been ongoing. More disturbing was evidence that Natalie had been actively helping him launder money through shell companies registered under variations of her maiden name. "The money they took from your joint accounts was just the surface," Ben explained, showing Colin transaction records. "They were using your business reputation as cover for something bigger." Colin examined the paperwork, his expression hardening. "They were planning to frame me if things went south." Ben nodded grimly. "These duplicate contracts with your company letterhead, but subtle differences in the terms. Classic setup for fraud allegations. If their plan had worked, you'd be fighting criminal charges while they disappeared with the assets and the kids." The discovery that his wife had not only betrayed their marriage, but had actively participated in setting him up for financial ruin and potential imprisonment ignited something cold and methodical in Colin's mind. "Options?" he asked simply. Ben outlined several approaches, from immediate legal action to more strategic countermoves. "The problem is, going public means exposing everything, including their allegations against you, fabricated as they are. The investigation alone could damage your business reputation. And the kids would be caught in the crossfire," Colin added, thinking of how Alex was already struggling. They were interrupted by the doorbell. When Colin answered, he found Vanessa Patterson on his doorstep, her expression a mixture of fury and anguish. "Where is he?" she demanded, pushing past Colin into the foyer. "Where's my husband?" Colin led her to the living room, offering her a seat she refused to take. "I assume you figured it out." "Figured out that my sister and my husband have been." Vanessa couldn't finish the sentence. "Ryan didn't come home last night. Natalie's not answering my calls. Then I found records of an apartment lease in Phoenix with both their names." "When did you discover this?" Colin asked, studying her closely. "This morning," Vanessa replied, her voice breaking. "I came straight here. I thought maybe it was a mistake, that there was some explanation." "There isn't," Colin interrupted gently. "It's been going on for 2 years, Vanessa. I only confirmed it myself yesterday." Vanessa collapsed onto the sofa, her composure crumbling. 2 years? How could I not have seen it?" "We see what we expect to see," Colin said, pouring her a glass of water. "The question is, what do you plan to do now?" Her eyes met his, sudden understanding dawning. "You're not just letting them get away with this." "No," Colin confirmed. "I'm not." The conversation with Vanessa revealed additional pieces of the puzzle. She'd noticed financial discrepancies in their accounts months ago, but Ryan had dismissed her concerns with plausible explanations. She'd also found hotel receipts that Ryan claimed were business trips, the same hotels documented in the texts between him and Natalie. "I feel like such a fool," Vanessa whispered. "All those times they were together while we were watching the kids or working." Colin recognized the same pain he felt, the humiliation of having been deceived by the people closest to them. What they did reflects on them, not us. After Vanessa left, promising to consider Colin's proposal for a united front, he made another call, this time to Fletcher Boyd, his most trusted project manager. "Fletch, I need you to take over operations for a few weeks," Colin instructed. "Family emergency." "Everything okay, boss?" Fletcher asked, concern evident in his voice. "It will be," Colin replied. "But I need to focus on my kids right now." With the business temporarily handled, Colin retrieved the children from Leo's house. Sophie ran to him immediately, wrapping her arms around his waist. Alex hung back, uncertainty written across his features. "Has Mom called?" he asked hopefully. "Not yet, buddy," Colin answered honestly. "But we need to talk about what happens next." That evening, Colin sat both children down and explained as gently as possible that their mother had made choices that meant their family would look different moving forward. He was careful not to demonize Natalie, despite his own feelings, knowing the children needed to process the situation without additional burdens. "Are we poor now?" Sophie asked suddenly. The question caught Colin off guard. "No, Princess. Why would you think that?" "I heard Mom telling Uncle Ryan that you'd have nothing left," Sophie explained, her perceptiveness once again revealing how much she'd observed. "She said you'd lose everything." The innocent revelation of such callous planning strengthened Colin's resolve. His children had been witnessing more than anyone realized, carrying knowledge no child should bear. "We're going to be fine," Colin assured them both. I promise you that. Later that night, after the children were asleep, Colin received a text from an unknown number. We need to talk. Meet tomorrow. Neutral location. It was from Natalie. Colin didn't respond immediately, instead reviewing the comprehensive strategy he and Ben had developed. The next move was critical, not just for his retribution, but for protecting his children from the fallout. He finally replied with a time and location. A coffee shop in a busy shopping center where their conversation would need to remain civil. Then he called Diana Frost again. I need surveillance on a meeting, he instructed. And I need to know who else Natalie contacts between now and then. Diana's response was professional and immediate. Already on it. Regarding the financial records you asked about, we've found the connection. Sending details now. The information that appeared in Colin's email minutes later confirmed his suspicions. The betrayal went beyond the personal. It was a calculated destruction of everything he'd built, orchestrated by the woman who had once vowed to stand beside him. Colin closed his laptop and walked to the window, looking out at the quiet street where he'd built his home and raised his family. The neighbors had no idea of the war being waged behind closed doors, the strategic moves and countermoves that would determine not just his future, but his children's as well. Tomorrow would be the first public battle in what promised to be a long campaign. But Colin had something Natalie and Ryan didn't. Absolute clarity about what he was fighting for and what he was willing to sacrifice to win. As he turned from the window, his phone chimed with a message from Ben. Documents filed. Clock starts tomorrow. Colin allowed himself a grim smile. Natalie thought she was arranging a negotiation. She had no idea she was walking into an ambush of her own making. Chapter 6. The trap is set. The Denver Coffee Collective buzzed with morning activity when Colin arrived 15 minutes early for his meeting with Natalie. He chose a table in the corner, visible enough to discourage a scene, but private enough for conversation. Diana Frost sat 3 tables away, appearing absorbed in her laptop, but strategically positioned to observe and record if necessary. Colin spotted Natalie the moment she entered. She dressed carefully in a conservative blue dress that projected an image of the wronged party rather than the betrayer. Her eyes scanned the coffee shop, momentarily widening when she noticed Diana before focusing on Colin. Who's your friend? Natalie asked as she sat down, nodding toward Diana. Insurance, Colin replied simply. You didn't come alone either. He gestured subtly toward the window where Ryan sat in his Range Rover across the street, pretending to be on a phone call, but watching the coffee shop intently. Ryan is concerned for my safety, Natalie said defensively. After how you behaved at the cabin. Let's skip the performance, Colin interrupted. We both know why we're here. Natalie's carefully composed expression faltered before she regained control. The children need stability. This hostile approach isn't helping anyone. Interesting coming from the woman who planned to disappear with them to Arizona, Colin noted. But you're right about one thing. They do need stability. That's non-negotiable. Natalie leaned forward. I'm their mother, Colin. Courts favor mothers. Usually, Colin acknowledged. But courts also take a dim view of parents involved in financial fraud who attempt to flee state lines with children during divorce proceedings. The color drained from Natalie's face. You're bluffing. Colin slid a manila envelope across the table. These were filed with the court this morning. Emergency custody petition based on flight risk and criminal investigation. Natalie opened the envelope with trembling fingers, scanning the documents inside. Her expression shifted from confidence to shock to calculation as she processed the legal maneuver. This won't stand, she said finally. We have explanations for everything. Character witnesses. You're just trying to intimidate me. Am I? Colin asked mildly. Page 4 might interest you. The judge granted the temporary order. I have sole physical custody until the hearing next week. You can have supervised visitation until then. Natalie's composure cracked. You can't do this. The children need me. They needed you when you were planning to uproot them from their school, friends, and family for your affair, Colin countered. They needed you when you were willing to destroy their father to cover your tracks. It wasn't like that, Natalie protested, lowering her voice as nearby patrons glanced their way. Ryan and I, we fell in love. These things happen. Love doesn't involve embezzlement and fraud, Colin replied evenly. Or setting up your children's father to take the fall for your crimes. Natalie's eyes darted around the coffee shop, calculating her options. What do you want, Colin? Money? The house. Name your price. The suggestion that everything, their marriage, their family, his relationship with his children, could be reduced to a transaction confirmed everything Colin needed to know about the woman he'd married. I want my children protected, he stated. I want what's rightfully theirs secured. And I want you and Ryan to face the consequences of your actions. Natalie's expression hardened. Ryan has connections. Powerful ones. You're a contractor with some local success, Colin. Don't overestimate your position. Interesting you should mention his connections, Colin replied, sliding another document across the table. Like Senator Weber, whose campaign funds were among those Ryan misappropriated. Or Douglas Hamilton at First Federal, who's already cooperating with investigators to save himself. The names visibly shook Natalie. How did you? Diana is very thorough, Colin explained, nodding toward the PI. And people like Ryan always leave trails when they think they're too clever to be caught. Natalie glanced toward the window where Ryan was now standing beside his vehicle, watching intently. Her hand moved toward her purse. Before you text him to come rescue you, Colin said, you should know that Ben Wells is meeting with the district attorney right now. The only question is whether you're going down with Ryan or cutting a deal. A deal, Natalie repeated, her attention suddenly focused. Colin laid out his terms. Natalie would relinquish primary custody, agree to supervised visitation until a psychological evaluation deemed it appropriate for more, surrender all claims to his business assets, and cooperate with authorities regarding Ryan's financial crimes. In exchange, Colin concluded, I won't pursue charges against you directly, provided the money taken from our accounts is returned. The children's college funds, specifically. Natalie stared at him, measuring his resolve. And if I refuse? Then the DA gets everything, including evidence of your active participation in the scheme. The text messages where you suggested using my business as cover. The forged documents with my signature that you notarized yourself. For the first time, genuine fear showed in Natalie's eyes. You'd send me to prison? The mother of your children. You were willing to send me there, Colin reminded her. The difference is, I'm offering you a way out. For the kids' sake, not yours. The coffee shop had grown quieter, as if the other patrons sensed the gravity of the conversation happening in the corner. Natalie's phone buzzed with a text from Ryan, visible on the screen. Everything okay? It's your choice, Colin said, standing to leave. Ben will contact your attorney with the formal offer. You have 24 hours before we proceed with the criminal complaint. As Colin walked past Diana's table, he gave a subtle nod. She would monitor Natalie, tracking her next moves. Outside, Colin deliberately walked past Ryan's Range Rover, making eye contact with the man who had helped destroy his marriage. Ryan rolled down his window. This isn't over, Mercer. Actually, for you, it is, Colin replied calmly. The only question is how hard you fall. Back at home, Colin found Leo supervising the children in the backyard. Alex was showing surprising patience teaching Sophie how to shoot baskets, his earlier sullenness temporarily replaced by brotherly affection. How'd it go? Leo asked as Colin joined him on the patio. Phase 1 complete, Colin answered. Now we wait. The waiting didn't last long. By evening, Colin had received calls from 2 attorneys. Natalie's hastily retained divorce lawyer attempting to negotiate better terms, and Ryan's criminal defense attorney seeking information about what evidence might exist. Colin directed both to Ben Wells, maintaining the disciplined approach that had served him throughout his career. When emotional decisions were required, he made them with his children's long-term welfare as the only consideration. 3 days later, the hammer fell. Federal agents arrested Ryan Patterson at his office, charging him with wire fraud, embezzlement, and money laundering. The news spread quickly through Denver's business community, including to Alex, who learned about it from a classmate's text before Colin could explain. The confrontation that followed tested Colin's resolve to protect his children from the uglier aspects of the situation. You got Uncle Ryan arrested, Alex accused, storming into Colin's home office. Mom called. She said you're trying to destroy them because you're jealous. Colin set aside the contracts he'd been reviewing. Sit down, Alex. No. You're ruining everything, the boy shouted, tears welling in his eyes. Mom says once you calm down, we can all be adults about this. She says you're being vindictive. Alex, Colin said firmly. Sit down. Something in his father's tone penetrated Alex's anger. He dropped into the chair opposite the desk, his teenage defiance warring with the respect Colin had always commanded. Uncle Ryan was arrested because he stole money from his clients, Colin explained calmly, including your college fund. That has nothing to do with his relationship with your mother. Mom says you're making it all up, Alex countered, though with less conviction. Colin unlocked his desk drawer and removed a file, sliding it across to his son. These are bank statements showing transfers from your education account to an offshore account in the Caymans. This is your mother's signature authorizing those transfers. Alex stared at the documents, disbelief giving way to confusion. But why would she? Because she and Ryan needed money to start their new life, Colin said gently. And they didn't plan on taking financial responsibility for you or your sister once they left. The boy's face crumpled as the reality of the situation began to sink in. She told me we were all going to Phoenix, that you were trying to stop us because you were controlling. Colin moved around the desk, kneeling beside his son's chair. I would never stop you from seeing your mother, Alex. But I will stop anyone, including her, from hurting you or Sophie. For the first time since the ordeal began, Alex broke down completely, allowing his father to pull him into an embrace. The walls of teenage independence crumbled as he sobbed against Colin's shoulder. I thought it was your fault, he choked out. Mom kept saying if you weren't so obsessed with work, if you paid more attention to her. Your mother made her choices, Colin said, holding his son tightly. And now we all have to live with the consequences. But we'll do it together. That night, Colin received the call he'd been anticipating from Ben. She's accepted the terms. Full custody to you, supervised visitation, financial settlement, as outlined. She's also agreed to cooperate regarding Ryan's case. And Ryan? Colin asked. Facing 20 years, Ben replied. Unless he makes a deal, which seems unlikely given the evidence trail. His attorney is still trying to figure out how we got so much documentation so quickly. After hanging up, Colin sat on his back porch, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. The first phase of his plan had succeeded beyond expectations, leveraging the legal system to deliver consequences his betrayers couldn't escape. But financial ruin and legal jeopardy weren't enough. Not for what they'd done to his children. Not for how they'd planned to discard him once he'd served his purpose in their scheme. Colin's phone lit up with a text from Diana Frost. Phase 2 preparations complete. Awaiting your signal. He typed back a single word. Tomorrow. The trap had been set. Now it was time to spring it. Chapter 7. The Spider's Web. 2 weeks after Ryan's arrest, the media frenzy had begun to subside. The financial scandal had made headlines across Colorado. Prominent investment advisor arrested, wealthy clients defrauded, connections to political figures exposed. Ryan remained in federal custody, denied bail due to flight risk after prosecutors revealed the Arizona apartment lease and evidence of inquiries about non-extradition countries. Natalie had retreated to a small rented condo across town. Her social media accounts suddenly silent after years of curated posts showcasing their perfect family life. Her cooperation with authorities had spared her criminal charges, but her reputation in their social circle was destroyed. The carefully crafted image she'd maintained had shattered, revealing the calculated manipulator beneath. Colin had maintained a dignified silence throughout, focused on stabilizing his children's lives and ensuring his business continued to operate smoothly. To the outside world, he appeared to be the wronged husband handling adversity with admirable restraint. Exactly the impression he wanted to create. Few understood that Colin was merely setting the stage for what came next. On a rainy Tuesday morning, Colin sat in Ben Wells' office reviewing final paperwork for the divorce settlement. Natalie had relinquished nearly everything in exchange for immunity and a modest monthly stipend that would allow her to maintain a middle-class lifestyle. Far from the luxury she'd become accustomed to, but better than a prison cell. She signed everything, Ben confirmed, sliding the documents across his desk. Full custody is yours, with supervised visitation twice monthly until the family court evaluator approves a change. All financial terms as we outlined. Colin nodded, signing where indicated. Any word from her attorney about the visitation schedule? That's the interesting part, Ben replied, leaning back in his chair. She's requested a delay of the first visit. Claims she needs time to process everything before seeing the children. Process her failure, you mean? Colin said coolly. Delay granted. The kids need stability right now, not her dramatics. After concluding the meeting, Colin drove to a nondescript office building on the outskirts of Denver where Diana Frost operated her investigation firm. Unlike her online profile suggested, her actual operation occupied the entire top floor, a sophisticated command center staffed by former intelligence and law enforcement professionals. The final surveillance reports, Diana said without preamble as Colin entered her private office. She slid a tablet across her desk, displaying photos of Natalie meeting with various individuals over the past 2 weeks. She's reached out to 7 of Ryan's former associates, all of whom declined further contact after initial meetings. She's looking for leverage, Colin observed, scanning through the images. Or money, Diana nodded. Most interesting is this one. She swiped to a photo of Natalie with an older, well-dressed man outside an upscale restaurant. Gerald Hoffman, real estate developer with connections to the same political circles Ryan exploited. Has she made any progress with him? 3 meetings so far, Diana confirmed. Our sources indicate she's offering information in exchange for help. Colin's expression remained impassive. Information about what? About you. Diana pulled up an audio file. We managed to capture portions of their last conversation. She's suggesting she has evidence that you were complicit in some of Ryan's schemes, that you turned on them when you discovered the affair, but were originally a willing participant. The recording played Natalie's voice clearly. Colin knew more than he's admitting. I can prove it if you help me get back on my feet. Colin listened without visible reaction, though internally his anger crystallized into something harder and colder. Even now, after everything, Natalie was attempting to destroy him to save herself. She's desperate, Diana commented, making claims she can't substantiate. But potentially damaging nonetheless, Colin replied. Especially to the business if clients get nervous. Diana studied him carefully. You anticipated this. I anticipated everything, Colin confirmed, including what comes next. From his briefcase, Colin withdrew a sealed envelope which he placed on Diana's desk. This contains final payment for your services, plus the bonus we discussed. Your work has been exemplary. Diana didn't touch the envelope. Phase 2 moves forward tonight. Yes, Colin said simply. Everything is prepared. Diana nodded, pulling up a detailed file on her computer. Your friend Leo has handled the physical arrangements as specified. The digital infrastructure is in place. Timing will be critical. It always is, Colin replied, standing to leave. One chance to do this right. That evening, Colin maintained his normal routine with the children, dinner at home, helping with homework, Sophie's bedtime story, a brief conversation with Alex about his upcoming basketball tournament. The domesticity provided both cover and motivation for what would follow once the house was quiet. At precisely 11:30 p.m., after verifying both children were asleep, Colin went to his home office and initiated a secure connection on a laptop that wasn't connected to his home network. The screen displayed a simple interface with a countdown timer and the message, Operation Active, awaiting confirmation. Colin typed a 6-digit authorization code and pressed enter. The screen changed to display multiple video feeds, Natalie's condo exterior, the building lobby, and the hallway outside her unit. A separate window showed a GPS tracker indicating Gerald Hoffman was at his home across town. Colin sent a text to an unlisted number. Proceed. Minutes later, a maintenance van appeared on the condo surveillance feed. 2 men in uniform exited, carrying toolboxes into the building. Through the lobby camera, Colin watched as they spoke briefly with the night security guard, who nodded and buzzed them through after examining their credentials. These weren't ordinary maintenance workers. They were former military operatives now working in private security, associates of Leo's who specialized in discreet operations. Their objective tonight wasn't theft or violence, but something far more valuable, information. For 45 minutes, Colin monitored their progress through the surveillance system as they executed a flawless entry into Natalie's condo while she was out meeting friends, a gathering Diana had confirmed would last until at least 1 a.m. The men systematically photographed documents, cloned electronic devices, and installed nearly undetectable monitoring equipment before departing as efficiently as they had arrived. At 12:32 a.m., Colin's phone chimed with a message, package secured. By morning, Colin had access to everything. Natalie's new email accounts, text messages, financial records, and most importantly, the fabricated evidence she was planning to use against him. The documents were clearly altered versions of legitimate business contracts with Colin's company, modified to implicate him in Ryan's schemes. What Natalie didn't realize was that the original, unaltered documents were stored in blockchain-verified digital vaults that established their authenticity and timestamp. Her clumsy forgeries would only serve to incriminate her further if she attempted to use them. But Colin had no intention of waiting for that to happen. The information gathered provided the final pieces he needed to complete his strategy, including details of Natalie's upcoming meeting with Gerald Hoffman, where she planned to present her false evidence in exchange for financial backing to restart her life. At 7:30 a.m., Colin called Leo. "It's time for the final phase. Are your people ready?" "On standby," Leo confirmed. "Diana sent over the intel package this morning. Clean operation, just like we planned." "Good," Colin replied. "Execution begins tomorrow at 4 p.m. I'll handle Hoffman personally." Leo paused before asking, "Are you sure about this, Colin? Once we cross this line." "They crossed it first," Colin interrupted, his voice cold with finality. "When they tried to steal my children's future. When they plotted to frame me for their crimes. When they betrayed everything I built." "Understood," Leo acknowledged. "We'll be ready." That afternoon, Colin attended Alex's basketball game, cheered at Sophie's dance recital, and hosted a small birthday celebration for her with a few friends from school. To anyone observing, he was simply a devoted father rebuilding his family's life after betrayal, not a man orchestrating an elaborate trap about to snap shut on those who had wronged him. As he tucked Sophie into bed that night, she asked the question that had been lingering unspoken between them. "Dad, is Mom ever coming back home?" Colin smoothed her hair gently. "No, Princess. Mom has made different choices for her life now." Sophie considered this with a solemnity beyond her years. "Is it because she loves Uncle Ryan more than us?" The question cut through Colin's carefully maintained control, exposing the raw wound beneath. "Your mom loves you, Sophie. She just made mistakes that can't be undone. Like when I broke your special picture frame and tried to hide it." Colin smiled sadly. "Bigger mistakes than that. Adult mistakes." Sophie nodded as if this explanation satisfied her. "I'm glad you're not going anywhere, Daddy." "Never," Colin promised, kissing her forehead. "Not ever." After both children were asleep, Colin returned to his home office where the surveillance feeds from Natalie's condo showed her pacing anxiously while on the phone. The directional microphones installed the previous night captured her conversation clearly. "Tomorrow at 4, Gerald." "Yes, I have everything prepared." "No, Colin has no idea. The documents prove he knew everything Ryan was doing." "Yes, enough leverage to force a renegotiation of the settlement." Colin allowed himself a cold smile as he activated the final protocol on his secure laptop. A countdown timer appeared, 18 hours and 24 minutes, and counting down to tomorrow afternoon. The spider had built his web. Now it was time for the flies to become entangled. Chapter 8, Judgment Day. The Atherton Hotel's lobby exuded old-world luxury, marble floors, mahogany paneling, discreet staff who recognized wealth and power without needing to be told. At 3:45 p.m., Colin sat in one of the high-backed leather chairs, a perfect vantage point to observe both the main entrance and the elevators leading to the private meeting rooms upstairs. He wore a tailored charcoal suit that projected successful businessman rather than construction contractor, an image he rarely cultivated but could effortlessly embody when necessary. A Wall Street Journal lay folded beside him, untouched. His attention was focused on the hotel's revolving door. At precisely 3:52 p.m., Natalie entered. She had dressed carefully for the occasion. Conservative navy dress, understated jewelry, hairstyled to project competence rather than her usual calculated glamour. The portfolio clutched in her manicured hands contained what she believed was her salvation: doctored documents implicating Colin in Ryan's schemes. Colin watched as she approached the reception desk, confirming her meeting with Gerald Hoffman in Executive Suite 3. The receptionist directed her to the elevators with a practiced smile. Natalie didn't notice Colin as she passed within 15 feet of where he sat, too focused on rehearsing whatever pitch she had prepared. Once she disappeared into the elevator, Colin checked his phone where a secure messaging app displayed an update from Leo: all assets in position. Hoffman arrived through service entrance 10 minutes ago. Colin responded with, "Proceeding as planned." At 4:10 p.m., Colin took the elevator to the third floor, nodding to the plainclothes security officer stationed near the emergency exit, another of Leo's associates ensuring that events unfolded without interruption. The hallway was deserted except for a maintenance cart positioned strategically outside Executive Suite 3, seemingly abandoned by hotel staff, but actually containing surveillance equipment monitoring the meeting inside. Colin approached the suite, withdrawing an electronic key card provided by the hotel's head of security, a former client who owed Colin a significant favor. He paused, listening to the voices inside through an earpiece connected to the surveillance system. These documents clearly show Colin Mercer's signature authorizing transactions related to the diverted funds, Natalie was saying, her voice confident. He was fully aware of Ryan's activities, but turned on him when he discovered our relationship. Gerald Hoffman's response was measured, skeptical. These are serious allegations, Mrs. Mercer. If authentic, they contradict the narrative that's been established in the media and with prosecutors. That's why they're valuable, Natalie pressed. Colin has cultivated this image of the wronged husband, the dedicated father victimized by his wife and brother-in-law. These prove otherwise. And what exactly do you want from me in exchange for this information? Hoffman asked. Financial backing to restart my life, Natalie replied without hesitation. And your connections to force a renegotiation of my divorce settlement. The trap was set. Colin swiped the key card, entering the suite without knocking. Natalie's face registered shock, then fear, as Colin walked calmly into the room. Hoffman, a silver-haired man in his 60s with the weathered features of someone comfortable with power, showed only mild surprise. I believe I'm right on time, Colin said pleasantly, as if he'd been invited. Colin, Natalie gasped, instinctively gathering the documents spread across the table. How did you? Mr. Hoffman and I have mutual interests, Colin interrupted, extending his hand to the older man. Thank you for arranging this meeting. Hoffman stood, shaking Colin's hand firmly. Mr. Mercer, your reputation precedes you. Natalie looked between the two men, comprehension dawning slowly. You know each other. Not personally, until today, Colin clarified, taking a seat at the table. But Mr. Hoffman contacted my attorney yesterday after you approached him with your proposition. The color drained from Natalie's face. Gerald, whatever he's told you. Please, Hoffman raised a hand, silencing her. I've known Thomas Patterson, Ryan's father, for 30 years. When his daughter-in-law approached me claiming to have evidence contradicting everything the authorities have established, I did my due diligence. This is a setup, Natalie accused, standing abruptly. I'm leaving. I wouldn't, Colin advised calmly. Not unless you want to explain those forged documents to the FBI agents currently waiting in the lobby. As if on cue, Colin's phone displayed a text from Diana, federal agents on standby. Evidence package delivered. Natalie sank back into her chair, the reality of her situation becoming clear. You planned this. I planned for everything, Colin corrected, including your attempts to frame me after your own immunity deal was secured. Hoffman leaned forward. Mrs. Mercer, I agreed to this meeting not to help you, but to understand the full extent of the situation affecting a family I've known for decades. What I've witnessed today confirms everything Mr. Mercer told me, which is, Natalie challenged, that you're willing to destroy anyone, including the father of your children, to save yourself, Hoffman stated flatly. The documents you presented are obvious forgeries. Coming here today wasn't just foolish. It constitutes attempted fraud and violates your immunity agreement. Colin placed his own folder on the table. These are the original, blockchain-verified contracts with immutable timestamps. Alongside them are records of your activities since Ryan's arrest, including your meetings with his former associates and your explicit statements about fabricating evidence against me. Natalie's facade finally crumbled completely. What do you want from me, Colin? Haven't you taken enough? I've taken nothing that wasn't rightfully mine or our children's, Colin replied, his voice devoid of emotion. But you're right. This meeting isn't about taking more. It's about ensuring you understand your position going forward. He slid a document across the table, a modified custody agreement with terms even more restrictive than the original. You'll sign this now, relinquishing all visitation rights until a court-appointed psychiatrist certifies you're no longer a detrimental influence on our children. You'll also sign a sworn affidavit confirming that the documents you presented today are forgeries created by you alone. And if I refuse? Natalie asked, though her voice lacked conviction. Then Mr. Hoffman will testify about this meeting. The federal agents downstairs will receive the evidence of your attempted fraud, and your immunity deal will be voided, Collins stated matter-of-factly. You'll join Ryan in federal custody by nightfall. Hoffman stood, buttoning his suit jacket. I've seen enough. Mr. Mercer, I'll leave you to conclude your business. My statement has been recorded as agreed. He nodded toward a small device on the table that had been disguised as a pen holder. After Hoffman departed, Colin and Natalie sat in silence for several moments. The once beautiful woman who had shared his bed for 15 years now looked hollow, her careful makeup unable to hide the growing lines of stress and fear. You've thought of everything, she finally said, reaching for the documents with trembling hands. Not everything, Colin replied. I never thought you'd try to take my children from me. I never thought you'd attempt to destroy everything I built. Those were your innovations. As Natalie signed the papers, tears finally breaking through her composed facade, she asked the question that had clearly been haunting her. Did you ever love me, Colin? Really love me? Colin considered the question carefully. I loved who I thought you were. That person never existed. Once the documents were signed, Colin gathered them into his briefcase. The agents downstairs have been instructed to escort you home. Your belongings will be delivered to your sister's house in Breckenridge tomorrow. You're not to return to Denver without written permission from the court. Vanessa won't take me in, Natalie protested. Not after everything. She's your sister, Colin replied dispassionately. And unlike you, she understands family loyalty. The arrangement is already made. As Colin prepared to leave, Natalie made one final desperate attempt. The children will ask for me. Sophie will cry for her mother. Colin paused at the door, allowing himself one moment of genuine emotion. Yes, they will. And that pain, their pain that you caused, is something I can never forgive. Not if I lived 1,000 years. The hotel corridor was empty as Colin walked toward the elevator, his footsteps echoing on the marble floor. Inside the elevator, he allowed himself 10 seconds to close his eyes, exhaling slowly, releasing the tension of the confrontation. When the doors opened to the lobby, he was composed once more. Diana Frost waited near the hotel entrance, pretending to review documents on a tablet. As Colin approached, she fell into step beside him without acknowledging him directly. Ryan received the evidence package at the detention center an hour ago, she murmured. His attorney has already contacted the prosecutors about a potential deal. Too late, Colin replied, his voice barely audible as they crossed the lobby. The senator withdrew his support this morning. No deals. Outside, Leo waited with the car, opening the door as Colin approached. Once all three were inside and moving through downtown traffic, Leo asked the question. Is it done? Colin nodded, loosening his tie. It's done. She's finished. And the children? Diana inquired. We'll never have to see her again unless they choose to when they're older, Colin answered. The psychiatric evaluation requirement ensures that. No judge will override it given the evidence we've assembled. The car traveled through the city toward Colin's home, where Mrs. Henderson, an older widow from the neighborhood who had become the children's after-school caretaker, would be preparing dinner with Sophie's help and monitoring Alex's homework. As Denver's skyline receded in the rearview mirror, Colin reflected on the past month's events. The discovery, the betrayal, the calculated response. He had dismantled the conspiracy against him, turning his enemies' weapons back upon themselves. Some might view his actions as excessive, even cruel. But those people hadn't seen Sophie's tears when she realized her mother had been willing to abandon her. They hadn't witnessed Alex's confusion and pain upon discovering the lies he'd been told. They hadn't felt the cold determination that came from knowing your children's future had been bargained away by the people who should have protected them most. Any regrets? Leo asked quietly as they turned into Colin's neighborhood. Colin watched as his home came into view, lights glowing warmly in the windows, Sophie's bicycle propped against the garage door, the basketball hoop where he and Alex had recently begun reconnecting during evening games. Not a single one, he answered with absolute certainty. The spider had sprung his trap. The web had held. Justice, cold, implacable justice, had been served. Chapter 9, Aftermath. 6 months later, the Denver morning dawned crisp and clear, sunlight glinting off fresh snow that had fallen overnight. Colin stood at the kitchen window, coffee in hand, watching Sophie and Alex build a snowman in the backyard. Their laughter drifted through the glass, a sound that had become increasingly common as the wounds of betrayal slowly healed. The doorbell rang, announcing the arrival of Ben Wells for their quarterly review meeting. Colin greeted his attorney with a firm handshake, leading him to the home office where financial statements and legal documents were already arranged on the desk. "The business is thriving," Ben observed, reviewing the quarterly reports. "3 new major contracts since New Year's. The scandal hasn't affected your reputation after all. If anything, it enhanced it," Colin replied, taking his seat behind the desk. "Clients appreciate knowing who they're dealing with, someone who won't tolerate dishonesty at any level." Ben nodded, moving to the more personal matters. "Ryan's sentencing is next week. Prosecutors are pushing for the maximum. 25 years given the scope of the fraud and the number of victims." "Good," Colin said simply. "And Natalie?" "Still in Breckenridge with Vanessa," Ben confirmed. The court-appointed psychiatrist submitted his 3rd evaluation yesterday. He slid a folder across the desk. "He continues to recommend against resuming visitation. Cites her persistent attempts to shift blame and inability to acknowledge the damage her actions caused to the children." Colin reviewed the report without visible emotion, though internally he felt a grim satisfaction. The system he had carefully manipulated was continuing to deliver exactly the outcome he had designed. "She's requested another hearing," Ben continued. "Judge Winters has denied it. Says he needs to see substantial change before reconsidering the custody arrangement." "Which won't happen," Colin noted. "Not with what we know about her continuing contacts with Ryan through intermediaries." Ben raised an eyebrow. "Diana is still monitoring?" "Some things are worth the ongoing expense," Colin replied. "The children's safety isn't negotiable." After concluding their business, Colin walked Ben to the door. As they passed the living room, Ben paused to look at the family photos on the mantel. New ones showing Colin with the children at various activities, their faces happier and more relaxed than in earlier pictures. "You've rebuilt well," Ben observed. "Not many could have managed this outcome from such a disaster." Colin's expression remained neutral. "I protected what matters. Nothing more." After Ben's departure, Colin joined his children in the backyard. Sophie immediately dragged him into their snowman construction project, directing him to find suitable sticks for arms while Alex worked on packing snow for the head. "Dad, can we invite Uncle Leo and his family for dinner tonight?" Alex asked, his relationship with Colin having strengthened considerably over the months. The boy who had once been sullen and distant now sought his father's approval and company regularly. "Sure," Colin agreed, helping position the snowman's head. "I'll call him after we finish this masterpiece." Sophie worked with serious concentration, her creativity flourishing in the months since the separation. The therapist Colin had engaged for both children had noted her resilience, along with her tendency to process emotions through art and imaginative play. "Dad, does Mom ever ask about us?" she asked suddenly, catching Colin off guard with the directness of the question. Colin crouched to her level, choosing his words carefully. "She does. She asks the judge and the doctors when she can see you again. But she doesn't call," Sophie observed, "or send letters." "The court has rules about that right now," Colin explained, maintaining the careful narrative he'd established. "Remember Dr. Martinez talked about this? Mom needs to get better first." Sophie considered this, then nodded solemnly. "Like when you're sick and have to take all your medicine before you can go back to school." "Something like that," Colin agreed, relieved at her acceptance of the explanation. Alex, now 14 and a half, wasn't as easily satisfied. Later that evening, after dinner with Leo's family, he approached Colin in the study where Colin was reviewing plans for a new project. "I found articles online," Alex said without preamble, "about Mom and Ryan, about what they did." Colin set aside the blueprints, giving his son his full attention. "I see. What questions do you have?" "They stole money," Alex stated. "From lots of people, and they were going to blame you for it." "Yes," Colin confirmed, seeing no reason to shield his son from facts he'd already discovered. "They were." Alex struggled visibly with his next question. "Would Mom really have let you go to prison, while she and Ryan took us to Arizona?" Colin considered softening the truth, but decided against it. Alex deserved honesty. "The evidence suggests that was their plan, yes." The boy sat heavily in the leather chair opposite Colin's desk, processing this confirmation of his mother's betrayal. How can someone change like that? She was our mom. She used to make pancakes on Sundays and help with school projects. People are complicated, Alex, Colin replied carefully. Sometimes they hide parts of themselves for years. Sometimes they change when tempted by things they think they want more than what they have. Did you hate her? Alex asked. When you found out. Colin paused, considering the depth of emotion he'd experienced in those first days after the discovery. I was angry, disappointed, hurt, but mostly, I was focused on protecting you and Sophie. By making sure she couldn't see us anymore? By making sure she couldn't hurt you anymore, Colin corrected gently. There's a difference. Alex nodded slowly. I used to be mad at you. For breaking up our family. For making Mom leave. I know, Colin acknowledged. That was a normal reaction. But it wasn't your fault, Alex continued, meeting his father's eyes directly. You didn't break anything. They did. The simple statement, delivered with teenage directness, struck Colin more powerfully than he expected. For months, he had executed his carefully calibrated revenge without allowing himself to fully process the emotional aftermath. Hearing his son's absolution broke something loose inside him. Not forgiveness for those who had betrayed him, but perhaps the beginning of freedom from the cold rage that had driven him. Thank you for saying that, Colin said quietly. Later that night, after both children were asleep, Colin sat on the back porch despite the cold, staring at the stars visible through breaks in the clouds. His phone buzzed with a text from Diana Frost. Final surveillance contract expires tomorrow. Renew. Colin considered the question. For 6 months, he had maintained comprehensive monitoring of Natalie's activities, partly as insurance against further schemes, partly as the final expression of his need for control in a situation that had once threatened to destroy everything. After several minutes of reflection, he typed his response. No renewal needed. Final report sufficient. The decision wasn't forgiveness. Colin Mercer did not forgive betrayal, but it was acknowledgement that the victory was complete. Natalie and Ryan would never recover from the destruction he had engineered. Their punishment would continue without his active participation. The next morning brought news that Ryan Patterson had attempted suicide in his cell after receiving word that his final appeal for leniency had been rejected. He had survived, but would face his sentencing confined to the prison medical ward. Colin received the information from Leo with the same impassive expression he had maintained throughout the ordeal. Keep me updated, was his only response. At the construction site of his newest project later that day, a community center he had partly funded himself, Colin surveyed the progress with satisfaction. The foundation was solid, the framework rising true and strong against the Colorado sky. Fletcher Boyd approached, hard hat in hand. Structure's looking good, boss. We're ahead of schedule despite the weather. Excellent, Colin nodded. The children's wing is our priority. I want the roof sealed before the next storm system. As they walked the site, discussing technical details and material deliveries, Colin found himself genuinely engaged in the work for the first time in months. The constant vigilance, the execution of his revenge, had consumed mental energy he could now redirect toward building rather than destroying. That evening, as he helped Sophie with her science project, a model of the solar system that had overtaken the dining room table, he received a call from Vanessa Patterson. He stepped into the hallway to take it, his guard immediately raised. Colin, Vanessa's voice was strained. I thought you should hear this from me first. Natalie's gone. Gone where? He asked sharply. No one knows, Vanessa replied. She left a note saying she couldn't live with what she'd done anymore. Took her passport and the cash she had saved. The police are looking, but Colin processed this development, calculating the implications for his children, for the legal arrangements he'd so carefully constructed. When did this happen? Last night, Vanessa said, after she heard about Ryan's suicide attempt. I've already notified the court through her attorney. After ending the call, Colin stood motionless in the hallway, absorbing the news. Natalie's disappearance was the final act in their tragedy, neither victory nor defeat, but simply conclusion. Dad, Sophie called from the dining room. I need help with Neptune's rings. Coming, Princess, he replied, setting aside thoughts of Natalie to focus on the daughter who needed him now. In the weeks that followed, life settled into new patterns. The police classified Natalie as a missing person but found no evidence of foul play. International border records eventually confirmed she had entered Mexico, then seemingly vanished, likely using the false identification documents Ryan had once procured for their planned escape. Colin explained her disappearance to the children as compassionately as possible, framing it as another symptom of their mother's problems rather than final abandonment. The family therapist helped them process their feelings, while Colin remained the constant, unfailing presence in their daily lives. 1 year to the day after the fateful trip to the cabin, Colin stood in his backyard watching his children play with neighborhood friends. A barbecue sizzled nearby, attended by Leo and his wife, while other guests, colleagues, neighbors, parents of the children's friends, mingled on the patio. Diana Frost appeared at his side, a rare social appearance for the usually private investigator. "Quite a transformation," she observed, nodding toward Alex laughing with friends. A dramatic change from the angry, withdrawn boy of a year earlier. "Children are resilient when they have stability," Colin replied. "And their father? Is he resilient too?" she asked perceptively. Colin considered the question seriously. "I've been called many things. Ruthless, unforgiving, cold, but never weak." "That's not what I asked," Diana noted. Colin watched as Sophie ran to show him her latest artwork, a family portrait showing just the three of them, standing together under a bright sun. "I'm exactly who I need to be," he told Diana, accepting Sophie's drawing with genuine appreciation. "Someone who protects what matters, whatever it takes." The evening wound down as the sun set over Denver, casting long shadows across the yard where a new life had been carefully constructed from the ruins of betrayal. Guests departed with warm goodbyes. The children helped clean up without complaint, and the household settled into its comfortable routine. Later, alone in his study, Colin unlocked a drawer that contained the final surveillance report on Natalie, the last trace of the woman who had nearly destroyed everything he valued. After a moment's hesitation, he fed the pages into the shredder, watching as they disintegrated into unrecoverable fragments. The action wasn't forgiveness. Colin Mercer did not forgive betrayal, but it was acknowledgement that justice, cold, complete, and devastating, had been served. The past was finally where it belonged, behind them, while he faced forward with his children beside him. In the quiet of the evening, Colin Mercer closed the drawer on the remnants of what had been and turned toward what would be, a future built with the same precision with which he had dismantled those who had dared to threaten what was his. Some would call it merciless. He simply called it justice. Cold justice. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.